Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so very honored that you've chosen to join us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya, Ghana, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Rob Harrell. He is here to celebrate Batpig, When Pigs Fly. Before we invite Rob into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Freaky Funky Fish, odd facts about fascinating fish, written by Deborah Kempf Shoemaker. From zapping, stinging, even singing, to playing dead or having a see-through head, discover the interesting things different fish do to survive in this delightful non-fiction picture book. Fish have fins and gills and tails. All fish swim, and most have scales, but not all fish act or look the same. From zapping, stinging, even singing, Freaky Funky Fish, Odd Facts About Fascinating Fish is an adorable picture book with a scientific and child-friendly underpinning. Check it out today. What a great addition to any family library, and the illustrations by Claire Powell are absolutely delightful. Freaky Funky Fish, Odd Facts About Fascinating Fish by Deborah Kempf Shoemaker. Join us right now from right outside of Indianapolis in Indiana. Our guest today is here to celebrate Batpig, When Pigs Fly. Please welcome to the show, Rob Harrell. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me. I love this.
I am excited to have you on. I can't wait for you to tell us all about Batpig.
Well, I'm ready to go. You just tell me, point me, and I'll start talking.
Well, this is a graphic novel. Am I right?
It is full color, full graphic novel, all ages. I had an absolute blast writing this book. I'm actually working on the third one now, so it's going to be a series of at least 3. Awesome. So yeah, it's been an absolute dream to work on.
So Batpig is I see from looking at the book, Batpig is a pig who thinks he's Batman.
Well, no, what it really is it's a little more nuanced. He's just your average pig. He likes, mud baths and sandwiches and all that, hanging out and playing cards with his friends. And then he accidentally, there's a prank that goes wrong, and his friend Brooke, who's a bat, she absolutely sort of bites him on the nose. And it turns out that she's just like a little bit radioactive, and so he starts getting powers. And then what's really fun about these books is he sort of originated in my previous book, Wink. It was one of my characters drew this character, Batpig. But in this, I get to go back and tell, start from scratch. I get to tell his origin story, and you get to see him, create his costume and figure out how to fight bad guys. So, yeah, it's fun.
It's fun. It's good that Bat did something fun in your book. Bats have been getting a real bad reputation lately. They're caused a bit of...
They had a bad couple of years. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to redeem bats, and actually, I think this character Brooke, his 2 best friends are Carl, who's a fish, and Brooke, who's a bat. And yeah, I think Brooke redeems bats. She's kind of the heart of the operation. Yeah. Because they've had it rough, but and then you get to see each one of them get their little stories and all that, and I focused on laughs in here, so there's all laughing, no pointing fingers at the bat.
There you go. That's important. Where did these characters come from? Do you wake up in the middle of the night or do you eat some bad sushi or I?
Well, lots of coffee helps. But I will say this: Batpig himself actually started out So in my book Wink, it was about a kid who it's a novel, and it's about this boy who's going through radiation treatments actually, and it was based on something I had gone through. And when I did it, I was doing my comic strip at the time called Big Top. So every day I had this something, sort of a fun world to escape into, and I could. I think it really helped me going through all my treatments. So I wanted the character Ross to have something like that. So he comes up with the character Batpig in the story, and I'll be honest. At first, it was Bat Hamster, and then I realized there were a lot more bat puns with Batpig. You got bacon and hooves and snouts and all that, and so I went with Batpig. And then once I drew him, I was like, oh yeah, this is my guy. And so then it's almost like in the book you see these comics that Ross has created, and it's sort of a window into how he's dealing with his treatments and all that. But then I loved doing him. My publisher liked him. People liked him when the book came out, and so they were like, would you want to do something more with Batpig? And I, just absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it was so fun after a little bit more heavy book to just do something light and fun and let my imagination just go completely crazy. And some of it I don't know where it comes from. Like you just start drawing his best friends are a bat and a fish, and I couldn't tell you how I decided on that. And then most of my good ideas come to me in the shower. Like I just came up with a character for book 3, which is Sharkraham Lincoln, and he's half Abraham Lincoln and half great white shark. So he has like the mind of our greatest president, but he still wants to eat baby seals and lion or whale carcasses, and so yeah, a lot of them come to me in the shower. My wife has to yell at me so I don't waste too much water. So I get out of there quickly and start writing.
I was going to ask you, do you just take the soap and you start writing on the walls and hope that it doesn't?
No, I just start repeating it over and over to myself and hoping I don't forget until I get out. And then, I run wet to a notepad and start writing stuff down half the time. It's a weird process, but it works.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do with this image of you running out of the shower, dripping and
Sorry.
finding.
Erase that memory. Erase that image. Yeah, bad image. I'm wearing a towel. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I that could be a great character for a series.
Sure. Yeah. Towel guy.
Towel guy.
Yeah, I love it. I might make that happen. But no, so there are some lessons that are told in these books. There's a lot of focus on friendship, especially between Carl and Gary and Brooke, but I kind of hide them all. They're pretty well hidden in there, but they're there. So there are some heartfelt moments throughout the books and all that. But then I just packed it full of laughs, and I tried to make it funny for anybody who picks it up, adults included. So I think, judging by the response so far, I think I did a pretty good job. But it's great. In the first story, so there's 2 stories in each book. Like the first story, I kind of was thinking of, I used to read those Archie Comics digests when I was growing up. And you'd have a little Jughead story, and then you'd have a bigger Archie story, and then a big Betty and Veronica story. So I kind of split it up like that. You get a couple of big Batpig stories, and then a little story in between, like an intermission about Carl and Brooke usually. But yeah, it's really fun. The first one, he goes up against this giant mutated lizard named Repto Man, and in the second one, he goes up against a deranged butcher who wants to take over the world harnessing meat power, and she sees that Batpig would be the ultimate meat,
the ultimate meat,
which is kind of gross. Yeah. And then he finds out that like the smell of cooking bacon is Batpig's kryptonite, and so it's not really a direct spoof of any one superhero. It's more just sort of his own character, I think.
Yeah.
But there are definitely nods to a lot of the stuff, like to Batman and Superman, and I'm a fan, so of course that's going to be in there.
Do you find yourself needing to kind of reel your imagination in to the point you're like, oh no, that's too crazy, or do you kind of have to push yourself like, no, it's not crazy enough, I need to add more ridiculousness?
It's more that I'm more like, let's turn up the ridiculousness, and so far I haven't come up with an idea that my editor has been like, no, So far I haven't reached the edge of what's acceptable for Batpig. So that's part of what's so much fun with it. It's just like having this huge new box of toys that I can play with and do whatever I want. And I do the writing and the artwork, and so like my last book, Wink, I focused on the writing. It has some artwork in it, but it's always really fun when you get to play with both sets of tools. So I write it and I make myself laugh then, and then I draw it and I get to make myself laugh again and fix things. If it's not making me laugh the second time through, then I tweak it. So it's at this point I'm just letting the imagination fly.
One of the things as you're talking, I really envy the ability to sit down and write funny. When I'm doing my educational magic shows, I can riff and I can tell a story in front of an audience, and that just fuels the energy, and it's coming out. I was speaking about performing in Indiana with you. I remember being in the middle of that audience and just walking up into the bleachers and talking to the kids and riffing and just having a blast. But when I go to sit down and recapture that on paper, it's just not there.
Yeah. I've done a syndicated comic strip for forever. I did one called for like 19 years now? Yeah, I did a strip called Big Top for 5 years, and then I've been doing the strip At Him at Home since then. And it's a muscle that it was really hard to get there when I started Big Top. Before I ever hit a newspaper, there was a lot of work on trying to figure out how to do that. And it would take me a week to write a week of strips. And then finally I clicked into, it's like a little thing clicks in your head and it's like, oh, I think I get that. And so, I suppose it's any kind of comedy writing, or if you're writing stand-up or writing for your magic, it would be sort of the same thing where like the more you use it and the more you write it down. But it is tough because when you're writing it down, I have to imagine how someone else is going to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just make it all about inflection and stuff like that. So it's a muscle. And I think just like anything else, if you use it enough, it starts to build up. And then, if I go on vacation for a couple of weeks, I could tell it's hard to get back in the groove. So I always do my best work when I'm really busy. And right now I've been crazy busy with these books. And so it just feels good to sit down and let it flow out. So it's not so much work right now as it is playing, which is a good thing. I think, these books.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, and we've talked a lot here on the show about how challenging it is to write a story, to take someone who's been writing novels for adults or for young audiences and then decides to write a picture book. And it's like, wow, now you have to tell a story that you were telling in 50,000 words. Now you have to tell it in 600 words. Yeah. You have an even bigger challenge. You are telling stories in your comic strips with 24 words?
Yeah. And I will say that's been the greatest training ground. I feel like I went to like cartooning, masterclass or something, because doing it every day, 7 days a week, and you've got to whittle down to its essence. You can't be real wordy, and you can't, and sometimes you can use a real wordy strip, for a humorous effect, but generally you want it to be as quick a read as possible, so that and get the point across and the humor across. So which is really, it was interesting when I wrote my book. I think I'm so used to taking out extras that I even when I wrote, like when I wrote Wink, I didn't, I had to remind myself that I could put a little more, describe the scene, things like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that book is kind of a quick read, is just because I've been for years, I've been paring it down to its essence, and that sounded really hoity-toity, but I just mean, I use as few words as I can. So, and it's fun in a book like Batpig to let the characters rant at times. And that's like like a luxury.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't let them get too wordy in this book. I still try to keep the action flowing.
Well, there does seem to be an awful lot of action. The illustrations are, as we say in Boston, wicked fun, and exciting. Comics and I always try to remind folks, and I wasn't. If I when my son was in middle school, I didn't fully appreciate the fact that his love of graphic novels and manga that I was supportive of,
Mm-hmm.
that he was reading, and I didn't value it, and I did, because and people have heard this too often here in the show, but I know I would go into his room very often and say, would you please read a book that doesn't have a picture in it, just once for me, please?
Yeah.
But I think,
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, it is an argument that keeps coming up, or a discussion that keeps coming up. Is it reading and all that? And my only thought, and sorry, I feel like I cut you off, but my only thought is that like I wasn't a big reader until I found Mad Magazine, and I found Magazine, and it was sort of the spark that lit the fire. And it had some off-color jokes in it, and my parents probably weren't crazy that that's what I was choosing my time to read and reread and all that. But it got me hooked, and it got me just hooked on the process of reading, or sitting down and taking the time to pore over something in a detailed manner. And I think, there's no question that if somebody starts out and they love that, they're gonna start reading books that don't have pictures, and then hopefully they keep reading books that do have pictures too. I'm a big proponent of doing both, and I do both. I like graphic novels and big thick adult novels and all that. I like them all. So that's interesting that your son is he a big reader now?
he's still reading those graphic novels and anime and all of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I think that field of those kind of books has opened up so much right now that there's no end to what all you could read in there, and I think it's really exciting stuff. I think there's also just such creativity on display in graphic novels. It's just a slightly different kind. You're getting the visual, and I love, in particular, I love a graphic novel where it's all one person. The person writes it and they draw it. I think it's like you're almost honing more in on what that person envisioned in their head, and on their idea. You're getting their idea in almost the purest form at that point.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I always tell that story because I don't want parents who are listening to make the same mistake that I did. Just to encourage your kid. If your kid's reading, they're reading, and I shared this a couple of years ago on the podcast. Comics have been such an important part of the American culture, and I don't know if it's important in other parts of the world, but I know here in Boston, when I was a kid, there was a newspaper strike, and there were three papers at the time. They all went out on strike, and the thing that people were craving were the comics. And to the point where the local TV news stations would read the comics on the news report so people could get their fill.
I love that. I mean, I've heard it described as a sort of uniquely American thing, but I don't know if that's entirely true. I actually, when I was in my 30s, I tried out for this thing, and through the Rotary Club, I got sent on an exchange with other young adults. So I got sent over to Africa for 5 weeks, and they brought some people over here from Africa. And in Africa, I got to meet with all these African cartoonists. Oh. And it was fascinating. And we were in Zimbabwe, and one of the guys we met with was so wanted by the government that we had to, call one person and make all these arrangements, and met up with him in the back of a fabric store. So, I'm not sure it is. And I clearly it's everywhere, and it's very important. It was very cloak and dagger. It was like a James Bond movie or something, meeting with this cartoonist, but it was fascinating. And I think there's just such a connection to it. I think sometimes in newspapers they forget that that's how much of a draw that is to the paper. I know it's where I go 1st when I read the paper to this day. But yeah, that warms my heart to know they were reading the comics on the news. I love that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that is such a vivid memory. And I think I was only 5 or 6 years old, but I remember that. And I remember my parents calling me and going, hey, they're going to read the comics on the news.
That's so great. That's so great. And I just think, you said something about that you had made a mistake with your son. I don't think that sounds like a mistake. If anything, I think encourage all kinds of reading, encourage them to try reading stuff in prose, reading graphic novels, reading books without words, hopefully you just, again, it's sort of that blanket love of reading, which I think is, and not because it's good for you or I think it's a gift. I love reading and I don't think my life would be the same. I know it wouldn't be the same without a lot of the books I've read.
Yeah. Is there a subject that you're or style of writing that you're looking to tackle that you haven't had an opportunity to tackle yet?
Well, having written Wink, that was again more of a novel. I think it would be interesting to try to write a book without any art. It's been something that I've sort of I started out as an illustrator and then did comic strips and then a graphic novel. And then, I slowly whittled down the drawing. Now I'm back to full drawing, which is really fun with Batpig. But I think I might try just writing a novel at some point. And I haven't written anything that's the technical, qualify as adult. That might be interesting to me. My secret love is I have a secret love of horror novels. And so it would be really fun for me to try to write something creepy. I did come up with an idea for a middle grade book that was deemed a little too creepy. So maybe I've got it in me, but they thought it was a little too spooky. So maybe I'll tackle that and just write it as an adult novel.
Yeah, just go bump it up to the to the
bump
adult.
up the scares a little bit. Yeah. And I don't know if I've wondered. I'm like, well, if I make a name for myself as a kid's author, do I have to go under a pseudonym or something? But because I wouldn't want some kid to accidentally pick up one of my horror novels. I don't know if that'll ever happen. That's just one of those little weird things in the back of my head that itches back there like, oh, write something scary.
Oh, cool. Hey, you mentioned loving Mad Magazine. Was there a particular part of Mad Magazine that was your favorite? I was a big Spy versus Spy fan.
I love Spy versus Spy. I always loved the movie parodies. Jack Davis is a hero. And one of the cool things about getting into cartooning is, I got to meet him. And I've got to meet Sergio Aragonés, who's awesome. And, I loved his little things in the margins and all that. That was one of my favorites. And I actually ended up doing some stuff for Mad, which I did a series called Pondering the Really Meaningful Stuff, which was one of my favorite moments in my career so far. I had always wanted to be part of the usual gang of idiots, as they call the writers and artists. And I got to. It was for a short period of time that I did it, but that was a thrill.
Yeah, what a neat experience that was.
Yeah, it was very cool. And then I've found that cartoonists and artists and all, they're just the nicest people in the world. And so every person I've met that was involved in Mad Magazine, Al Jaffe, all these, they're all just incredibly nice people and very welcoming. And so it was a great community to sort of stumble into.
Yeah, always nice when your heroes don't turn out to be jerks.
Yeah. They say don't meet your heroes, but in that case, it worked out. So, I'm pretty happy with that one.
Now, do folks ever get a chance to meet you at a Comic-Con or events like that?
I have. I've done Comic-Con. When my first graphic novel, Monster on the Hill, came out, I actually did Comic-Con in San Diego, and this was amazing. The graphic novel March was coming out at the same time, and so I shared a table with Congressman Lewis, if you know John Lewis, for like 3 days, and it was amazing. His line was much longer than mine, but we had a really good time. But yeah, so I do go out to conventions. I do school visits. If you know anybody who's looking for someone to talk to their class, I do, Zoom talks all the time. I've been doing a lot of them this last couple of weeks. Yeah, so I try to get out there as much as I can. I mean, Wink came out at the very end of March of 2020, which was not a great time to have a book tour planned.
Yeah.
So everything's been very weird for the last 2 years. I'm getting very good at Zoom. And, I have it now where I can draw on the Zoom and design some monsters with kids and stuff like that. And I love doing it. So it's really fun.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I know people are listening and they're thinking to themselves, I'd love to have Rob talk to my class. So where can they go to find out more about you and find out more about Batpig?
You can go to robharrell.com. I actually need to get Batpig up on there, but if you just do a Google search for Batpig, you can find it at Penguin Random House. They have a whole page about it. Or if you find me on social media, I'm all over. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm pretty easy to find. So I think if kids have half as much fun reading Batpig as I had writing it and drawing it, then we're golden. Because awesome. I think kids will like it because I enjoyed that. It was probably been the most fun project I've ever worked on. So. I really hope kids get a hold of it, and I hope it lights something up. And then, there's another one. So the second book is called Too Pig to Fail. That'll be out next July. And then about 7 months later than that, we're putting out Go Pig or Go Home. And they've got, I'm about halfway through the third book right now. And hopefully Batpig has a long life. Hopefully it ends up being, a parade float. Or a balloon. That'd be great.
Something to look forward to. Well, I'm really excited, and I'm really happy that you're a lot easier to find than that cartoonist in Zimbabwe.
Yes, no fabric store required.
And I hope he stays hidden so that he doesn't get himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Batpig, When Pigs Fly, Rob Harrell. Hey, Rob, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for being here.
This has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest, Morenika Oyanusi, is going to return to celebrate Isaiah in the Orchestra of Sound. That's the next episode of the podcast. If you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated at how difficult it is to let the world know about your book. You never set out to be a marketer, but as the author of a children's book, especially if you are the self-published or independently published author of a children's book, you're the CEO of that small business, and marketing is probably the most important task you have. You don't have to do it alone. We would love to help you. There are so many different ways that we can help you celebrate your book. To learn more, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down to our various services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Rob Harrell. Be sure to check out Batpig, When Pigs Fly. We also want to thank our sponsor. That's right, Freaky Funky Fish, Odd Facts About Fascinating Fish by Deborah Kemp Shoemaker. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.